everybody. This is David Snyder again. For today's interview, I am interviewing Captain Jay Woelkers, retired Navy, who was commander and CEO of Bethesda Walter Reed, in charge of medical readiness for the Navy, and who has an illustrious background and career with the Navy. Jay and I have recently developed a course, a one-day intensive course called the Leadership Value Equation, and the whole thing stemmed from a conversation we had in which Captain Woelkers said that companies or organizations that are really successful are a result of the interdependence of two types of values. First and foremost, they put a tremendous amount of importance on valuing their own people. And at the other end of the continuum, that leads to an increase in business value, whether it be performance, productivity, or other business measurables. It's a fascinating interview. Captain Woelkers is a true American hero. I think you're going to enjoy every minute of this. So, stay tuned. Good morning, Captain Woelkers.
Hey, good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fine, sir. As some folks know or will soon know, we have created a full-day intensive leadership program called the Leadership Value Equation. We will spend a little time today talking about that and your views on the framework and content of the core messages in the Leadership Value Equation program. In brief, your experience as a naval officer and a leader has shown you that the value we put on our team members translates into a functional value later, whether that be better execution, better outcomes, or even more profits in the corporate world. Before we start the interview, can you just give us the 1-minute snapshot of your illustrious career?
Wow, thanks, David. That's a great opening for me. I appreciate the kind words, and certainly 39 years is tough to snapshot, in a quick snapshot. So but I'll give my best try. And I joined the Navy in 1982. I was an enlisted sailor for 11 years following. I started at the bottom of the barrel in the United States Navy, serving on the USS Alamo and Deck Division, and many of the leadership principles and my value-based approach started there. I was in leadership positions for my final 21 years of my Navy career, to include 3 commanding officer positions, which are equivalent to CEO positions in the civilian world, and one of which was a commanding officer of shock trauma, or a Bravo surgical company in Afghanistan. I had 2 additional executive officer positions, which is your second in command, second to the commanding officer, and 2 officer in charge positions, which are basic independent leadership of outpatient medical facilities and operations. After 39 years of active service in the United States Navy, with 2 combat tours, leading shock trauma in Iraq and Afghanistan, and 1 final commanding officer tour at Naval Sport Activity in Bethesda, Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, I retired. And now I spend the majority of my time working with wounded warriors and speaking on chronic stress that leads to stress trauma, and also leadership and value-based leadership, which to bring awareness to the powerful impact of how this value-based leadership has on organizations and leaders in those organizations.
Well, that's a fantastic snapshot, sir, and we certainly appreciate your leadership and everything that you've done for the country and all of the people that you've served and all of the good that you've done. Just a heartfelt thanks for that.
Thank you.
So now for the official interview, it seems to me, Jay, you're one of those leaders that I've met who seems to have spent their career making teamwork a non-negotiable, if you will. That is, you seem to have had little tolerance or zero tolerance for leaders who did not appreciate the phenomenal responsibility that they have for showing their team members how much they are valued. Would you say that's a true statement?
Uh, Absolutely, David. However, in the question, I would say that one of the keys to valuing your staff and those around you, it includes creating a culture of tolerance. So many times, folks that have worked with me would say that I'm a very tolerant person as I go through the leadership, and when we put that as one of our top focuses, it starts the baseline for a nice value-based culture in your command. So absolutely to your question, but certainly tolerance is part of that value-based leadership approach that I have.
Outstanding. I'm really glad you added that part to the equation. Question number 2, tell us about a time when you told your leaders that they had to do a better job of valuing their team. What precipitated that, and how did you address the issue, and what was the outcome?
Wow. So 39 years, a lot of opportunities for that one, David. It's an interesting question. So, because I rarely told my staff what to do in regards of character and how to better value staff as a result of them being able to not do so. Rather, I demonstrated how to value staff, expand into creating outcomes. So one thing comes to mind. In the past, I had a leadership team come to me, and they were not receiving or obtaining the outcomes that we all desired as an organization at the time. And it was 3 of them, and they were pretty high powered, and they were, I think, a little bit self-absorbed, and they couldn't understand why their team was failing, their morale was low, and what could they do about it? Well, of course, whenever you have outcomes that are not going appropriately, it's gonna rise up to the top. And in my position, I was the buck stopped at me. So I asked him, I said, what's going on? And I started asking them questions about their staff. And they really wanted to talk about the numbers. And I said, let's talk about the staff, the people that create the numbers. So as we got further down the line, I explained to them how I value the approach of, the value-based approach of leadership, and how if you understand your staff better and when they're in crisis and who they really are, how that could better the outcomes that are coming out of their shop. And so I said, hey, how about we take a walk? So I took them for a walk. And it was a pretty big place. It wasn't just a couple hundred people. It was way more than that. And so I took them into their shop. We walked together as a leadership team, and we started walking around. And I started asking people, how are you today? What are you doing today? Tell me about what you do for this organization, how it impacts the organization. Where are you from? What do you like to do? Do you have kids? I spent maybe 1 to 2 minutes with each individual in the immediate location. And we probably talked to about 10 people. And I think it was an aha moment for that leadership team, because they learned more about those particular staff in that short period of time than they had known ever. And I think it clicked in their head that if we could value them as people and not just as machines creating a product, maybe things can get better. And over time, in the next report that came through, there was a stark improvement on the outcomes that we were looking at. And it really is okay. So they see that small piece of value-based leadership out there, and then they want to sell it to their staff. And before you know it, becomes that culture. So that's just one example. There's so many examples when you have to go to combat operations, when you're moving all the time, when you immediately walk in a place, and I've moved 13 times in 39 years, when you're all under the same umbrella of the military and my job career choice, when you're moving around like that, it's very important that you the speed of trust, if you will, where you go in and gain that trust by getting to know your people and valuing them. And it's an immediate turnaround. It's almost, it's unbelievable. It's that simple. But that was one great story.
Yeah, that seems, I think you've hit the nail on the head in something that everyone is beginning to realize. And although it may seem simple, it's very, very true that we have reached a critical moment in our history in which our level of communications is just nowhere where it needs to be. There's something that's been lost in the authenticity and the genuine caringness of the way that people are communicating with one another, the way that you're talking about. And there seems to be no question in the mind of leaders that level of communication and valuing other people and telling them that they're valued, just it needs to come back to the forefront. Everyone's saying that. I think you've eloquently expressed it. And that leads me to my third question. Once you set high expectations for treating other members of your team with more value, how do you make sure that that change remains permanent or sticks and just doesn't like pass away in the next couple of days?
Well, again, outstanding question, because many of my colleagues have asked me the same thing. And oh, by the way, have adopted what I'm talking about. But you know what they say, nothing's permanent, right? And especially when you're in an organization that moves you around. So if you create a culture throughout the organization that's embedded in all the corners, from the people down there that are cleaning or changing your trash to the people that are doing nuclear fusion, you create this culture of value-based that we need to know everyone around us. We need to treat everybody out there like they're somebody's hero. Amazing things will happen. Even when I leave, when the new person comes, they have no choice but to jump on board, and they'll wonder what everybody seems to really be trucking along together. So it's really about creating a culture. And with anything that's going to be successful, any professional sports team, any top 500 company that's doing really well, the military organizations, which there are many that are doing well, you'll find that they have created a culture of success. And in my opinion, the culture of success starts with you, the employee, you, the leader. And once you do that, it's hard to break it. It takes a while to break it. It takes very little time to start it. So one of the ways to do that is to embed it into your mission statement and your philosophy. You can walk around and you can ask people, what's the philosophy of this organization? What's the mission statement? And they're so long, they're these huge paragraphs, and people will look at you like whatever they said at the top to make their money. But I come to work for whatever reason. I just need to make some money so I can pay the bills. Instead of, no, our philosophy is around people and taking care of the people. So, I've always created simple philosophies, which always at the top included valuing the people. Because after you value the people and they know it, you create the trust. And once you have the trust, excellence is guaranteed to follow. And when people are enjoying what they're doing, when they're trying hard to do something, when you're not there and when I'm not there and we're at home because we can't be there all the time, are they going to do the stuff they need to do while you're not there? And if it's a value-based organization where they know you value them, guess what? They're going to value you back. And when they value you back, they're going to go, you know what? I need to do this. Even though I wasn't told to do it, it's something that needs to be done. Instead of saying, well, David and Jay, they don't care about me, so forget it. I'm just going to go home. And then it doesn't get done. And then the outcomes are poor. Money's lost, opportunities lost, all kinds of bad things happen. So to create that culture, embed it in your mission, put it in your philosophy and writing, live it, make it something they can understand, that they can live. So you live it every day. That's what I do.
Well, that was, again, beautifully articulated, but I'm going to hit you up with a very tricky follow-up question on a how-to after that. I guess anyone who has read the good book has heard the story about having to feed thousands of people with 5 loaves and fishes, right? And this question kind of ties into the same thing. Just because you speak to your group doesn't mean that everyone else is going to get affected down the line. And what you're saying is something that needs to penetrate the culture as a whole. So to feed all of those people with 5 loaves, what do you have to do to make sure that the ones that are reporting to you hold the ones that they are leading accountable to, so that the ones that are reporting to them always uphold those high values of leadership that you're talking about? How do you get the thing to drill down through the entire organization?
Well, so that is a tough one, right? Because everyone has their leadership styles, and they may feel they're holding people. Well, not hold, I'm holding them accountable. They may feel like they're valuing people, and Jay, I hear what you're saying, but I do it this way, and they buy into it. Holding people accountable for their actions and their impact, really their impact of their actions on outcomes and people's lives. That's what I do. So that's how I hold them accountable. That's how I sell it to them that this value-based leadership works. When they're not taking care of their people and I can show them that the outcomes are poor, that's the accountability I hold them to. So everybody in an organization, if you buy the bus ticket, we may have to put you on that bus, and the bus ticket of underperforming, not into the company, not into your people. Maybe this is not the right job for you, David. It's time for you to go. Hold them accountable. That's the extreme. I don't believe in that extreme approach unless it's absolutely necessary, because everybody has a piece in that puzzle. So yes, I hold them accountable for the outcomes, and they want to be held accountable. And then I am a firm believer in authenticity, David. If I'm authentic, they will trust me. If I tell them I'm a certain way, if I want to be valuing my staff and they see me not doing it, I'm not authentic. I've lost the battle. So before I can hold them accountable, I have to allow them to hold me accountable. So we hold each other accountable. Amazing things happen. And the amazing thing that happens the most is trust. When there's trust in the game, it's on to victory we go. So again, it's authenticity, value my staff, and always, always, always people first.
So to achieve that domino effect you're talking about, where this value-based leadership is pushed down throughout the organization, when you talk to your team about these issues, you let them know with certainty that you, as the commander, were in fact modeling the exact same level of communication, trust, and respect that you wanted them to share with their teams, knowing that it all starts at the top. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying, and one way to do that is the loop, right? So I go to the bottom. I don't just talk to the leaders. I go down to the deck plate or to the floor or to the warehouse, and I ask them, what do you think about value-based leadership and value-based culture in this command? How do you feel about that? If they don't really know what I'm talking about, there's a disconnect in the communication chain. So it's important for me to go, okay, where am I missing the mark on getting it down to the deck plate level or down to the floor? How am I going to get it down there? So then I pull in the leaders again and say, are you really exemplifying what this means and what I'm asking you to do? Because at the top is where the culture is generated and started. And I would argue that you show me a company that's struggling, their management and their leadership at the top is struggling with some of these concepts. It's not down at the bottom. They will do, especially because it's gonna make their lives better all the time.
Excellent. Once again, beautifully articulated, which brings us to our last question, which is question number 5. Once you get the team focused on the value of people, you have to maintain this paradigm. And in the paradigm that you've just articulated, what value should be disallowed as counterproductive? In other words, how do you navigate those tricky aspects of maintaining a value-based culture in terms of behaviors that should now be considered counterproductive to the mission?
Well, there's probably several, and there's a lot of folks out here that may be watching this video or listening to this interview that are extremely talented leaders in their own right. But for me, and it's what has worked for me in the organizations that I've led, number one, the most important to me is never, ever allow leaders to humiliate anyone, especially in public. If you want to show value, to take someone and correct them in front of everybody never comes out as a positive to the team, and it's watched by everyone. It basically says, you don't value me as a person by humiliating me in front of everyone else. You know, the old adage of praise in public and punish in private is warranted. Certainly, if the correction is needed, it should be done, again, in a private and presented in an appropriate professional manner, not yelling at people. Otherwise, you just don't get anywhere. This reduces a chance of a repeat performance, in my opinion. You can get anybody to do what you want by yelling at them if you're in charge and their job's on the line. They will instantly do what you say to do as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral. However, when you leave the room, will they continue to do that for you? That's the big question. I want to have full confidence that when I leave the room, that everyone in that room is going to continue to perform at a high level because of the way I treat them in that value-based culture that I've created. I want to know the team members, not just their names. I want to know who they are. It also helps me when they're in crisis. Knowing when someone's in crisis is so critical. If I know them, I'll know that. If I don't, I'll never know. And then I'm going to struggle bad outcomes as a result. And, you know, finally to close out, I just do not accept anything less than a fully value-based culture. I keep striving for that. It's not like we're there. Okay, David, we're there. We can sit back. Let's hit the golf course on Tuesday, you know, and just ride it out. It's something that has to be nurtured and honed in all the time. And then you bring in the new people, and as they come in, you brief them on it. You talk about it to them when you start hiring people that are aspiring to that kind of culture, and it just grows and grows and grows. And then everybody has that positive energy and that positive drive for the team. And last but not least, I ask everybody in my team, and I try to be this too, is be that eagle among seagulls, and always lead by example. And simply said, you can't lose with that basic right there.
Well, thank you, sir. This has been a fascinating and profound interview. Just to tie things up with a bow, when you use the expression of the leadership value equation for the first time, and I was asking you, so what is the leadership value equation? You said, well, a lot of people talk about, well, increasing the value of the company. And the astounding thing that you said was that there are two definitions of value, and you should put your emphasis on the first definition first, which is to value your own people, and make sure that you are valuing your own people as much as you can at this one end of the continuum. And at the other end of the continuum, you will increase the value of your company and whatever you're trying to do. But you can't forget the first one. And I think that the first time that I heard you say that, it sent chills up my spine. It is the absolute truth. I think you hit the nail on the head. Once again, thank you for a wonderful interview and beautifully articulating this for us. And as we're moving forward in the future, helping the people that we're working with on the leadership value equation, I look forward to having more of these chats and interviews.
Yes, my pleasure, David. Thank you so much.
And thanks once again for your outstanding service to our country, sir. And we will talk to you real soon.
Yes, thanks.
Thanks.